Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Everything Within podcast. I'm your host, Alina Krasnožon. Every episode is a doorway back to yourself, back to your truth, back to who you were before the world told you who to be. Because everything you've ever needed has always been within you. I'm so glad that you are here. It's scary to be misunderstood and disliked for who you are. But do you know what's even scarier? Not knowing who you are in the first place. And for so many of us, especially those raised to be people pleasers, raised in environments where it wasn't safe to be fully ourselves, that's exactly what happened. We didn't lose ourselves all at once. We lost ourselves slowly, quietly, one small betrayal at a time. Every time we shrunk, every time we agreed when we didn't, every time we swallowed something that needed to be said. For me, this was my whole life. I grew up with a mother who was controlling, imposing her worldview on everything, and a father who was emotionally absent and shut down. There was no space for me to be messy, complex, or fully myself. So I did what children do. I created a version of myself that was easy to love, quiet, agreeable, invisible enough to be safe. And I wore that mask for so long that I forgot it was a mask. I was living for other people's version of me, with my parents, my colleagues, my husband, shrinking, adjusting, performing. It didn't even feel like struggle, it just felt like me, until it didn't anymore. And that's what this episode is all about. Because here is the truth, when you start showing up as your real self, people will misunderstand you, some will pull away, some will push back. We'll talk about why we developed these masks in the first place, what it cost us to keep wearing them, and what it actually takes to choose yourself, even when the people around you don't understand it, don't like it, or can't accept it. Because the moment you stop living for other people's version of you is the moment your real life begins. So let's start at the beginning. Why do we even care so much about what other people think? Needing approval is not a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's not your personal failure. It is biology. It is survival. For thousands of years, humans lived in tribes, and being rejected from that tribe meant death, literally. So your nervous system learned very early that belonging equals safety, that being liked equals survival, that standing out, being different, being too much was a threat. As children, we are completely helpless. We cannot feed ourselves, protect ourselves, or survive alone. So for a child, approval isn't just nice to have, it is everything. It is the difference between being loved and being abandoned, between being safe and being alone. A child will twist themselves into whatever shape is needed to secure that love and protection. It's not manipulation, it's the most intelligent thing a small human can do to survive. We like to think of ourselves as this highly evolved species, rational, conscious, in control, but the brutal truth, the kind you need to sit with and really make peace with, is that the biggest part of our behavior is run by the most primitive parts of our brain. Parts we don't fully understand, parts we cannot fully control. We don't control nearly as much as we think we do, and that is deeply uncomfortable to accept. Because if you accept that, you have to accept that so much of what you've done, how you've shown up, how you've shrunk, wasn't really a choice. It was programming, and understanding this intellectually changes almost nothing in the moment. You can know all this, you can read every book, listen to every podcast, understand the psychology completely, and still find yourself over-explaining, still find yourself shrinking, still find yourself choosing their comfort over your truth. Because knowledge doesn't automatically rewrite your nervous system. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes awareness, it takes a level of inner work that traditional self-development often doesn't even touch. Because this isn't about mindset tips or morning routines. It's about rewiring beliefs that were formed before you even had language to describe them. Now, there is nothing wrong with wanting to be liked, nothing wrong with wanting to belong, to be accepted, to be appreciated, that is deeply human, but it becomes a prison the moment your entire sense of worth is tied to it. When being liked stops being something you enjoy and becomes something you cannot function without. When it starts dictating your life choices, what you say, what you don't say, what you create, who you become. When you unconsciously hand your power over to external circumstances. When how you feel about yourself depends entirely on whether people approve of you. You lose the ability to validate yourself. You lose the ability to trust yourself. Your life stops feeling like yours because in so many ways it isn't anymore. And one distinction I had to completely deconstruct for myself is the difference between craving approval and caring about impact, because they can look identical from the outside but feel completely different on the inside. When you crave approval, you soften your truth, you avoid the hard conversations, the uncomfortable topics, the things people don't want to hear. You shape your message around what will be liked rather than what is real. But real impact requires truth. It requires being willing to say the things that make people uncomfortable, to speak about what actually matters, even if it costs you some followers, some friendships, some approval. You cannot create real impact while being obsessed with being liked. The two cannot coexist. At some point, you have to choose. Do you want to be liked or do you want to be real? And it shows up in the most subtle ways, the over-explaining, justifying your choices before anyone even questions them, the over-apologizing, saying sorry for existing, for having needs, for taking up space, the softening, rounding off your edges so nobody feels challenged, the shame, feeling embarrassed about your own story, about your conditioning, about the choices you made from a place of survival that you now see clearly. For me, it was everywhere. With my parents, with my husband, in my business. I was constantly shrinking, constantly explaining myself, constantly afraid that if I was too much, too real, too honest, I would be rejected and I wouldn't get the love I so deeply wanted. And the saddest part, I didn't even know that I was doing it. Here is something I've noticed. Most people don't realize the cost of being liked until something cracks, until life brings you to your knees in some ways. A relationship that falls apart, a moment of burnout so deep you cannot recognize yourself, a quiet breakdown in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. It's rarely one big dramatic moment. It's the accumulation of 1,000 small ones. And suddenly you look in the mirror and you don't know who's looking back, because the cost of being liked doesn't announce itself. It collects silently. It happens in the smallest moments. Every time you soften what you really think to avoid conflict. Every time somebody crosses a line and you stay quiet to keep the peace. Every time you feel that tension rising inside you, that discomfort, that knowing, and you ignore it anyway and choose their comfort over your truth. Each one of those moments feels small, manageable, even reasonable. But what's actually happening is that you're abandoning yourself over and over again. And over time, those small abandonments add up into someone you no longer recognize. You don't betray yourself in one big moment. You betray yourself slowly in all the moments you chose to be palatable instead of real. And then there is the exhaustion, because maintaining a performed version of yourself is a full-time job. Think about the energy it takes, constantly monitoring how you're coming across, replaying conversations, wondering what someone thinks of you, adjusting your words before they leave your mouth, managing other people's reactions, curating your image. You pour your entire life force into that invisible labor. And when you're spending all of your energy managing everyone else's perception of you, there is nothing left to ask yourself what you actually want, nothing left to explore what brings you joy, nothing left to even wonder what kind of person you want to become. You are so busy being who everyone else needs you to be that you never get to find out who you actually are. And here is something painful that took me a long time to see. When you perform a version of yourself, you attract people who fall in love with that performance. They don't love you, they love the mask. And so you find yourself surrounded by people, maybe even deeply connected to people who have never actually met you. Your friendships, your relationships, even your audience, if you're a creator, build on a version of you that isn't real, and then you're trapped. Because now, if you show up differently, if you start telling the truth, if you start taking up space, you risk losing all of it. So you keep performing, you keep shrinking, because the alternative feels like losing everything. But what you don't see yet is that you've already lost something far more important. Because being liked for who you are not is its own kind of loneliness. And it might be the deepest loneliness there is. You can be in a room full of people who adore you and feel completely invisible. You can be loved, praised, validated, and still feel this hollow ache that nothing seems to fill. Because what you're craving isn't more approval. What you're craving is to be actually seen, to be known, to bring your real self into a room and have someone to say, yes, I see you, I choose you, not the performance, you. And that can never happen as long as you're hiding. You cannot control how people interpret you, ever. You can be the most intentional, most thoughtful, most genuine version of yourself, and someone will still misread you, still project onto you, still decide who you are based on their own fears, their own wounds, their own limitations. And when you really sit with that, it's actually liberating, because you were never in control of that to begin with. The only thing you have ever had control over is your intention, who you are, what you stand for, the impact you want to make. And when you know those things deeply, not as concepts, but as lived truths in your body, something shifts in the way you carry yourself. There is a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself, doesn't need to defend itself. It just is, and people feel that. But some people will misunderstand you no matter what you do, and I want you to really accept that. Not as a sad thing, but as a fact of life. And here is why. People can only meet you as deeply as they have met themselves. That's it. Someone who has never questioned their own conditioning, never sat with their own discomfort, emotions, never done the work of looking inward. They cannot meet you where you are. They can only meet you on their level of consciousness, not yours. The more you heal, the more you grow, the more you elevate, the more uncomfortable you will become. The more uncomfortable you will make certain people. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you become a mirror, an avoidable, uncomfortable mirror that reflects back everything they are not yet ready to look at. The unlived choices, their suppressed desires, the version of themselves they keep postponing. And rather than look at that reflection, rather than sit with that discomfort, they will project it onward onto you. They will call it too much, too intense, too sensitive, too ambitious, too different. And what they're really saying is, you make me see parts of myself I'm not ready to face. And the moment you understand that, you realize that their reactions were never about you. So what do you do with that tension? Because it will be there. When you say something true and feel the room shift, when you make a choice that's right for you and feel the disapproval radiating, when you show up fully and feel someone pull away, the tension is real. Your nervous system will be activated in that moment. Your body will want to shrink back, apologize, and explain. And the practice, and yes, it is a practice, to feel that tension. Regulate yourself through it and choose yourself anyway, not aggressively, not defensively, just quietly, firmly choose yourself over and over again. And every time you do that, you become a little freer. Because here is what happens when you stop defending yourself, when you drop the mask completely and you just let yourself exist as you are, without justifying your past, without explaining your choices, without feeling shame for the parts of you that were shaped by pain. There is this extraordinary freedom that opens up. You stop spending energy on managing perceptions. You stop editing yourself before you speak. You stop carrying the weight of everyone else's opinion about your life. You feel whole, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You stop trying to prove your worth, and you just live it. Your growth will always disturb the people who have chosen comfort, always. Because when you do the work, when you heal, when you start living in a way that is truly yours, you become living proof that another way is possible. And for someone who has told themselves that change is impossible, that is just how life is, that their dreams aren't realistic, you are deeply threatening. You're not just different, you're evidence. Evidence that the story they've been telling themselves isn't the only story, and some people would rather discredit you than question their own narrative. So they will feel jealous, they will feel triggered, they will project, they will gossip, they will minimize what you're doing, and underneath all of it, there is one thing. You are doing what they want to do, but won't allow themselves. And that brings me to something that took me a long time to truly feel in my body. Being disliked by certain people isn't a failure, it's a compass. Because the people who fall away as you grow, the people who can't handle your truth, the people who liked you better when you were smaller and quieter and more manageable, they were never connected to the real you. They were connected to your performance. And as you shed that performance, as you become more fully yourself, you will naturally stop resonating with certain people. And that loss is real. I want to be honest with you about that, because I lived it. I lost friendships, people who I thought knew me, who I thought accepted me, couldn't recognize me anymore when I stopped performing. My relationships with my family shifted in ways that were painful and uncomfortable, but necessary. My relationships with my husband had to completely change when I stopped shrinking, stopped being the quiet, agreeable version of myself he had gotten used to. When I started showing up as my full self, that changed everything. Some of those changes were incredibly hard. Some relationships didn't survive it, and for a long time I questioned whether it was worth it. But here is what I know now. Those relationships were built on a version of me that wasn't real, and no matter how much it hurt to lose them or to watch them transform, I could not go back, because going back would have meant choosing the mask over myself, and had already paid too high a price for that. That loss is real, it can hurt. Grieve it if you need to, but understand what it means. It means you're no longer willing to make yourself small enough to fit into some spaces that were never built for all of you. Being disliked by the right people means you have finally started becoming yourself. Building the courage to be disliked and misunderstood has liberated me more than almost anything else in my life. But I want to be real with you about how that actually happened. In the beginning, when I first started understanding all of this, I tried to force it. I told myself I shouldn't care what people think and pushed myself to just stop caring overnight. And what that created was anxiety, a lot of it, because I was trying to perform, not caring the same way I had been performing everything else. And I didn't have the inner resources yet to actually hold that. I hadn't done enough healing. I hadn't made peace with all parts of myself. I didn't know who I was yet. I hadn't learned how to regulate myself when that tension arose. You cannot skip those steps. You cannot will yourself into freedom. It was a long process, gradual, non-linear, full of setbacks and moments when I slipped back into old patterns. It required more patience and self-compassion than I knew I was capable of. But slowly, through all the inner work, through the healing, through the learning to know myself deeply, something shifted. And one day I realized that I hadn't been thinking about whether people liked me, not because I forced myself not to, but because I was too busy being myself, too busy caring about what I actually want to say, what impact I want to make, what truth I wanted to speak. The need for approval didn't disappear because I fought it. It dissolved because something more important took its place. And that's what I want for you. Because of this, what we've been talking about today, this isn't about becoming provocative. It's not about being careless with people's feelings or burning everything down. It's not about being deliberately difficult or hard to love. It's about something much quieter and much more radical than that. It's about choosing yourself, maybe for the first time in your life, fully, unapologetically. It's about saying what you actually think instead of what will land well. It's about making the choice that's right for you, even when nobody around you understands it. It's about letting people be wrong about you without rushing to correct them. It's about taking up space you were always allowed to take up. It's about stopping the performance, not with a grand announcement, but quietly, privately, one moment at a time. It's about choosing your truth over their comfort. Your life over their approval, your becoming over their understanding. And yes, some people won't like it, some people will pull away, some will misunderstand you, some will prefer the version of you that was easier to be around. And you will feel that tension, and you will want to go back sometimes, and that's okay, that's human, but keep choosing yourself anyway, because here, what's on the other side of all of that? A life that actually feels like yours. Relationships built on truth, a sense of self so solid that others people's opinions stop feeling like verdicts, a creativity and presence that can only exist when you stop filtering yourself through everyone else's expectations, a freedom that no amount of approval could ever give you. So where in your life are you being likable at the expense of being real? Where are you performing? Where are you shrinking? Where are you staying quiet when something inside you needs to be heard? Where are you choosing their comfort over your truth? Sit with that. Be honest with yourself. And know that whatever comes up, it's not something to be ashamed of. Just the next thing asking to be seen. Thank you so much for being here. Everything you need to live a life that is truly yours is already within you. Until the next time, bye!